if you're not connected now, or you have other people in your organization that you want to show this to or pass it to, we'll be posting it on our YouTube site so that we can have, so you can watch it at a later time. I'm going to go ahead and drop everybody's hands there. It looks like we're all in, and I think that's about it. So I'm going to go ahead and hand over to Don. Don, are you there?
Yeah, I'm here, Charlie. Thanks.
Great.
All right, folks. Again, we appreciate your time today. We're going to jump right into this one. We all know why we're here. We're here to talk about these new kind of cloud services. Like Charlie said, I'm going to try to keep this into like 40, 45 minutes, something like that. I do sometimes either talk too fast or talk too much, so I'm going to try to not do either of those today. But we do have a fair amount of stuff to cover, and it's all stuff that I'm pretty fired up about. I get excited about this topic. So if I start talking too fast, I'll try to keep that under control, and we'll try not to use up all our time, so we've got some time at the end to take some questions and get some answers in front of you. So moving right into the topic here, the first thing I kind of wanted to talk about just briefly, I've had a couple of people ask me, where did that term, cloud software, cloud computing, cloud backup, what's the clouds got to do with all that? And partially the cloud nomenclature comes from all of our years of kind of diagramming out networks. Back in the very, very first days of multi-location businesses out there, about the only way to get your locations hooked together were over the old dedicated leased lines. And in that case, it was kind of the equivalent of two cans and a string. The phone company would, in essence, rent you a piece of copper between your two locations. And as long as that copper stayed solid, you had a connection to the other location. And it was very easy to say, well, this is a wide area network with no ambiguity about it. It was just the way it was. There was only one path your data could ever take to get from one location to the other. But that didn't stick around very long. That wasn't a very good use of the phone company's infrastructure. The copper didn't get utilized very well. And so other technologies came along over the years that let us do things called virtual private networks, and what, with the advent of things like frame relay technology and so forth, it just basically gave us as network technicians the ability to say, you know what, we'll get your data from point A over here on the left to point B on the right, from your main location to your remote location, but it might take any number of paths to get there, using these new technologies. And so what technicians started to do is they started to just draw a cloud in the middle to kind of represent the fact that we weren't necessarily sure how your data was going to get there, but we knew it would. And so when we start to talk about this cloud infrastructure, it's kind of that same kind of thing. You don't really necessarily know where the physical equipment is. It's just over there somewhere on the other side of the cloud from your building if you were looking at a kind of a diagram like this. So that's how we got into this cloud nomenclature. I know everybody kind of assumes everybody knows how we got there, so I just wanted to kind of give you a quick kind of background on why we use that term of clouds. So where does this stuff live then? If you're going to start thinking about this off-site infrastructure, the first thing I wanted to make you understand is there's these things out there now called data centers, and basically what they are is they're a dedicated building built from the ground up with the specific purpose of being the best place to put computers and nothing else. So when a typical data center is built, you see I've got kind of a picture of one there. They have raised floors on them, and you can see the grid work in front of those racks of computers there. The cold air comes up out of the floor right in front of the computers and goes through and gets exhausted out the back and so forth. And these data centers are built with redundant everything into them, basically. They have usually power coming in from two different power companies into the building. So if one power company has a major outage, this system just transfers over to the other power company's input. And they've got battery backups just in case both go down. And then if both go down and there's a catastrophic failure that starts to span a couple of days, they have on-site generators that generate their own power, and they typically have an enormous supply of fuel on-site for those generators and so forth. So a data center is really kind of basically a bomb-proof building that's built for this very specific purpose of being extremely redundant. No matter what happens, it's always there. We'll have typically, independent internet connections coming in from 2 or 3 or even more phone companies into there, great big fat pipes coming in. So no matter what happens, in the, the unlikely event that there's a big storm or an earthquake or a flood or whatever, these are the last places to be affected by bad news out there because of the way they're built. They're extremely secure. We have a bunch of our equipment in a data center here in Salt Lake, and just to get in the door, you have to scan your magnetic card at the door and type in your code, and then you stop at the first security checkpoint and you have to scan your card again. And to get further than back in where the actual equipment lives, we have to have a biometric scan of our palm prints and so forth. So the concept is this is a collection of equipment that a bunch of different people are using space in, and so it needs to be extremely secure. We can't have somebody in there poking around on our computers, and conversely, we can't be poking around shutting somebody else's machine off while we're in there. So even once you gain access into that area where the racks are standing, then you've got to have the right key or the combination or whatever to get the door of the rack open and so forth. So these are dedicated places where computers live. And they are basically optimized to be the ultimate scenario for a computer to live in. We always joke about it when we're working in there. We feel like we have to take a coat in there because the cold air blows right up, right up your pant leg as you're standing there working on the computer. And in general, it's not a great place to be as a human being. But if you're a computer, you're happy there. It's the best kind of place you can be. The air's filtered so that a bunch of dust isn't gathering up on the computers and so forth. Basically, it's just the best possible place you could think of to put your computers. The other thing that data centers have going for them is because of the mass of computers in a small amount of space, it becomes the most effective way to use the power and the infrastructure and so forth. As we all start to think about, greening our technology and greening society in general, data centers are going to play a key role in that because it's much more efficient to power one building than it is for everybody to scatter computers around, because they do have an impact on anybody's typical building. When you move into a building, a typical office, if you put a bunch of servers in that office with you, what you find is your air conditioner load starts to pick up. Your air conditioner's running all the time trying to offset the heat that those computers are putting into the environment. Your power bill goes up and so forth. But if you can put all this stuff in one place, you can keep it optimally organized for that equipment without affecting people, again, because it's not great to work in a place where the ambient temperature is 65 degrees, but computers are very happy there. They last longer and so forth. So in order for us to start to utilize this stuff, as we've talked about, moving you guys off of that old technology, we wanted to make you understand, first of all, that's what we're talking about, is we've got equipment in this level 3 data center over there that is state-of-the-art. We haven't, got this stuff sitting out in a Quonset hut somewhere. It's in the right place to be the best place to have a bunch of servers dedicated to serving people's requirements up. In order to get there to the data center, you are going to need to pay a little bit closer attention to your internet connection than you ever have in the past. Back, when we first all started using the internet, it was kind of considered to be a luxury, or if it was there most of the time, that was good enough. But nowadays, because the internet is the infrastructure, it is the path that we're going to take to get from your building to the data center, it becomes very important. And obviously, in order to do this cloud hosting type of thing, we do need to have a broadband connection into your building. So as we start to talk about what you've got, that's going to be the first thing that we're going to look at, is what kind of internet connection do you have, and is it a big enough pipe to accommodate the amount of data that has to move back and forth. Now, the good thing about it is we're not pushing gigantic amounts of data back and forth. We're basically just pushing screen refresh information back and forth, which I'll explain as we get a little bit further into this. But it's not like you need a great big gargantuan pipe, but you do need a fast internet connection. It does need to be one that's pretty solid. And some of you, I know we've got a couple of customers that are using the satellite internet out in very remote places. That's not the greatest way to do a cloud-hosted scenario right now. So not everybody is necessarily always going to fit into this model of having an internet connection will work. But 99% of the people will these days. And broadband is exploding out there. The phone companies and the cable companies and so forth just simply can't get it in fast enough to keep up with the demand. So if it's not right there today, it will be soon, or it's already, you probably already have broadband. You are going to need to make sure, though, that we have a secure firewall keeping track of that broadband connection, because again, this is a really, really important part of the pie, that firewall. It's got two jobs. The first is it's going to be the guy who embeds your traffic and your data into encapsulated data that's encrypted, so nobody else can see your information as you move it back and forth across the internet. And it's going to keep the bad guys out and the viruses out and so forth, so you guys don't have to deal with a bunch of nonsense that's coming along. Typically, most of you that have a broadband internet connection probably have a firewall already in place, a sonic wall. I know we've been putting those in place up there for years. However, we may look at that and find that, you know what, you're on an older model. We may want to look at one of these trade-up plans to get you into the newer technology, because one of the things that comes with that firewall is the ability to control the traffic and give priority to certain protocols in order to kind of make sure that we keep the things that we need to do to conduct business running the best. We can give those services a higher priority than the casual browsing off to Google or eBay or whatever else is happening. And so we can tell the firewall, this is the stuff we always want to go through with first priority, and this is the stuff that kind of has to take a back seat a little bit. And of course, you know, as the primary gateway to this data center, that firewall needs to be managed and monitored very aggressively, and that ties right into our global management system that we use today to manage firewalls. We're typically the first one to know if you have an internet outage, as long as we're managing and taking care of that firewall for you. We're the first one to know if you're getting a intrusion attack, or we can tell you how many viruses are being blocked or so forth. So anything that pops up as unusual activity or something that we need to take care of, that's an important part of this, is keeping things happy, keeping the firewall in good shape so that the bad guys stay out but the good stuff goes through. So now the way we do this, as we start talking about moving you off of dimensions and into these newer technologies, what you're going to find is, as the landscape has changed, the servers themselves have started to change, and people start to talk about server roles. There's different things that you have to have servers dedicated to do in this new kind of technology world with new networks and more flexibility and so forth. And in the buy-it-yourself model, what we typically do is we start down that road where we go, okay, well, you're going to need a SQL server physical machine to run the hardware to store the data. And then you're going to need another server possibly to manage your user accounts and maybe do the print jobs and store some files and so forth. And then if we're in an environment where we're going to put a terminal server in there to give your users a remote desktop, then there's another server there. And it's really not unusual for us to start to kind of build out several computers that work together to kind of each focus on their own little chunk of this pie to make things work. And that's not a very effective way to do it when you buy your own hardware, because the computers need to be kind of separated out so they can do these roles. But what happens is you wind up with a lot of equipment on site. So what we do in this virtual space is we go at it from a different approach, and we start with one big, gigantic server. And as you probably know these days, as fast as processor technology is going forward and the price of memory goes down and the size of disk drives goes up and so forth, it's really pretty trivial to build a great big computer these days that has a ton of horsepower in it. And by doing that, we can then take, using the virtual operating systems out there, Microsoft has what they call Hyper-V, and VMware has their ESX operating systems. It lets us carve that one big piece of hardware up into several smaller virtual computers within that space. And they work exactly like a real computer. They operate just like one. We can reboot them. We can tune them. We can watch how they're doing. We can update the operating system on them and so forth. But they're in this virtual arena inside of that big hardware. And typically we can get a whole bunch of computers running in one big physical box. So we leverage that equipment very well, as opposed to having to put a whole bunch of little boxes on site. We can put a big one in, and it's a much more efficient way to do it. It's better from the power considerations. Instead of 3 power supplies, we wind up with 1, and it's better for disk utilization, because everybody uses what they need instead of having a big disk sitting there maybe not getting used as well as it should be. So it turns out to be a really good way to do servers these days. Another thing that comes along with it that's really important is there's a lot of fault tolerance built into that model. If a if a computer goes down or has a problem, it's very easy for us to just build that image, move that image of that computer to another instance in that virtual world, and basically build that computer back up just as it was before that incident happened. Let's say somebody accidentally deleted half the operating system. We could just put that server back as a virtual machine and be right back from that disastrous scenario with very little time, no downtime, and so forth. Or if there's also ways for us to move your server from one piece of hardware to another. If we do have a piece of equipment that's starting to die and needs to be taken out of service, it's very easy for us to basically just slide all those virtual servers over to another physical machine, and you don't even know they moved, but it lets us take that physical machine that's got the physical problem out of the mix without affecting anybody. You don't have any downtime. We just slide you over to a different box, take the one that needs work out of service, fix it, put it back in service, and move things back. So this is kind of the best way to get the most bang for the buck out of servers these days, is to carve them up into little servers, let each one be dedicated to the job it needs to do, and share the load, if you will. We do find that as you're moving forward, you are going to have the different roles out there in your network, even if you're kind of a small location, just because of the virtue of the fact that the new operating systems do require some user security, and SQL needs to be on there. That's the underlying core data management system that stores the data now these days and so forth. So we can't really get away from the fact that you need these server roles in there, but rather than sell everybody 4 or 5 great big servers in their own building, we can do it a lot better by virtualizing them. Now, the remote desktop part of this is where it gets real exciting. Some of you who are coming out of the old days of the serial communications or the ASCII terminals on your desktop, you're probably, as soon as you start to think about networks, you start to imagine that you're going to have to go out and buy a whole bunch of brand new PCs, and then 3 years down the road, those PCs are going to be outdated and they're not going to be keeping up anymore, and you're going to have to buy new ones. And what happens if a computer dies? Now you've got to deal with moving the data off of it to a new one and so forth. But again, there's a better way to do that, and the way we do it is we use these things called these terminal servers to basically host a bunch of remote desktops in front of your users. And what that means is on anybody's actual desk, we don't have to put very much hardware. Obviously, there's got to be a keyboard and a mouse and a monitor there. But instead of a big computer or a PC under the desk, now we can use these things called thin clients. And what they are is basically a very small little form factor device that is, in essence, a computer without a hard drive in it. And it really just does this job of remotely connecting to that terminal server and presenting the desktop in front of you. You see a Windows desktop just as if you had a PC on your desk. But all your data, everything that you're working on, the programs, Microsoft Office, the point-of-sale application you're getting to, your documents that you've stored and all that is actually residing over on that other side of the cloud from you on that terminal server. So the way this works is you cut your costs of hardware going in. You don't have to buy a bunch of expensive PCs. You don't have to buy multiple copies of Windows, a new copy on each PC, and a copy of Office for every single PC, and then a copy of all the other software you need. That stuff all sits on the hosted desktops over on that terminal server, and is just part of that service that you're paying for to use that stuff. And additionally, because it's all over there on that server, if that remote thin client on your desk happens to die, that is really just a non-intelligent, there's nothing stored on it. So basically all we do is we take that dead piece of equipment, throw it aside, put a new thin client on your desk. You're right back in business, right back onto the remote desktop that you're using remotely on the server, and nothing changes whatsoever. There's no risk of you losing data. There's no risk of you not getting your internet favorites where you like your desktop's the way you left it. It's all over on that other side of the cloud. The other advantage to this remote desktop model like this is it's always sized right the way you need it to be, because it's actually residing on this great big server that can be scaled up or scaled down as necessary. You don't have to worry about outgrowing your PC. I have an office full of geeks around here, and so you can imagine we can't shuffle through PCs fast enough to keep everybody happy, because everybody always wants the bigger, better next model out there. But by virtualizing the PCs themselves on these big servers, they're always sized right. They can always be running on the current version of the operating system, and you're not in this hardware replacement race that you sometimes get caught into as you buy PCs for yourselves. Now, I did say at right at the start there, thin clients can go on most users' desktops. We do still find a few instances where maybe somebody's running a big, 2020 design package or something on their PC, and that might take more CPU time than we really want to have on a server. So once in a while, we may still find that you'll have a few PCs in your business, but by and large, most of what you're going to be doing as you move forward can be done on thin clients. And in this model of remote desktops out there, we're also very quickly getting to the point where you can start to run that remote desktop on a tablet of your choice, be it an iPad or a Microsoft Surface device or a Google tablet. It is a fact of life these days that people are starting to become more mobile as they do their job, and they just want to take their desk with them. And so a tablet is starting to make a lot of sense, or a laptop out there. And again, you don't have to worry about that. Is all my data on that laptop, is it going to be able to, get back to the point of sale system when I go? All it needs to be able to do is get to the internet and get to that cloud-based server, and off you go. You've got your desktop, you've got your work wherever that person wants to work. And that could be at home, could be on the job site. It really could be wherever you need it to be. So it kind of does unbuckle us from our desks as well. If you've got a big tower PC sitting under your desk, it's very difficult to travel with that thing. But these tablets, that is a good form factor for traveling, and so you can just take your desktop and go right with you. The email is a big part of this move into the cloud as well. Microsoft Exchange is, by and large, the most widely adopted mail infrastructure platform, whatever you want to call it, that is out there today. It's very full-featured. It doesn't just process your mail, but it takes care of your contacts. You can share contacts throughout the business so that everybody can have access to your vendor contacts. It does your calendaring. You can put your tasks in there that you need to work on. There's a lot of stuff in Exchange these days. And by moving into the Exchange realm, you get all those tools that come along with it, including your email. But you also, again, you get this flexible access. We don't want to have to build an Exchange server and put it in your building, which is what you used to have to do in the old days. Just like I was mentioning a SQL server and a domain controller. If you wanted your own Exchange server, back in the day of individual servers, you'd have to put yet another physical server inside your building, put another copy of the operating system on it, buy the Exchange platform itself, put that on there, maintain it all the time and so forth to get this flexibility. But today, we just let Microsoft host that server out on their side of the cloud. And by doing that, on your desktop, you get access to the Outlook application right on your desktop. But there's also a web browser version of it that looks basically identical to what's on your desktop. So again, you can be working on your PC at your desk or on your thin client at your desk and answering your email and seeing what's going on, and get up and walk out the door. And let's say you switch over to a tablet and open up your email on that tablet. You're going to see the same stuff that you saw when you left your desk. If you've replied to an email already, it's going to show as being replied to out there. If new stuff comes in and you read it on your tablet, when you get back to your desk, you'll realize that you read it and so forth. So the stuff's sitting over on the other side of the cloud, and you're in essence just looking at it on whatever device you're working on, and in whatever way you want to get to it. So if you've got a dedicated copy of Outlook, you see one view. If you happen to be visiting a hotel and you go down to the business center and log in across the internet to the web browser version of Outlook, looks just like what you've seen on your desk. It's all current, it's all updated, and then you can get up and go get in the car and pull it up on your smartphone or your tablet and never miss a beat. It's current wherever you go and however you look at it. And it comes with spam filtering built in. Microsoft Forefront's a really good product that is right on the front there. So not only do you have this great inbox with lots of flexibility, but you can keep the junk out of it, which is a necessary part of email these days, unfortunately. Now, cloud backup is something that we've kind of been starting to implement for some of you Dimensions customers today in as much as we can do given the limitations of the operating system and so forth. But here's the fact of life about backups. Backing up to tape is dead. Its time has passed, and tape backups are just too unreliable. When that was all we had, it was the best there was, and we dealt with the fact that once in a while when you needed a critical tape, that tape had deteriorated and wouldn't read. There was nothing we could do about that. It was the best technology for the time. It worked great. You guys got used to carrying a tape off-site at night, probably for all your life. You've carried tapes home and kept them in the car or put them in the bank or whatever. But that was a best of breed 5 or 10 years ago. It's not anymore. So nowadays we just simply don't back up to tapes anymore. We back up directly to another disk drive. And again, as technology advanced, the price of disk drives has come down to where terabytes and terabytes of disk space can be bought for the price of what we used to buy the old 60 megabytes back in the day. So it's no longer cost prohibitive to use disk drives to back up to. They're more reliable because you're writing to a physical disk drive. It's much faster because it can just handle more. You're not waiting for that tape to physically spin against a magnetic tape head. And it's much more flexible. Because it's faster, because we have more room to work with, we could be much more detailed about the way we do backups. We might choose to do a backup once an hour throughout the day of your business, just in case somebody makes a mistake at 2 o'clock. We can take that person back to 1 o'clock and put back that file they just deleted with most of the changes that they had already been making, that they'd made in it. We couldn't do that in the backup to tape days. We got one shot. We backed up at the end of the night, and if we lost something, you lost a whole day's worth of business. But again, you just don't have to deal with those limitations anymore. So we get a lot more flexibility out of this picture. And we are actually, for our cloud backup solution, what we found best is kind of a hybrid solution. That term's overused a lot these days, but there is a local component to this and a cloud component to the backup. So what we typically do is we add a network-attached storage device, basically a disk drive in a box with a network card on the back of it, onto your network. And we make that drive available as the backup destination for the backup software that's running. So we basically, again, like I said, we can back up at the end of the day, we can back up throughout the day and so forth. And it's very quick. It uses the network backbone, which can move a lot of data around, and the drives can write data very quickly. So what we typically do is we use that as the primary target for the backups, because that gives us a very quick way to restore a file if we need to. It's right there in the building. And if you call us and say, oops, I just deleted this spreadsheet that I was working on, is there any way to get that back? Yes, there is. We grab it quickly back off the backup drive, restore it, and you're back in business. But that still doesn't answer that question of what happens if the building burns down, or there's a flood, or some other natural disaster. Heaven knows we've been through enough of those in all the years we've all been together. So we know we've got to deal with the disaster recovery side of life. And so what we do is at night, when you're not using that internet connection to get to the cloud servers, we'll take that connection and basically use it as the pipe to push a copy of your data off-site to one of those data centers out there. So we keep it local so that we can do quick backups and restores. Just like in the old days, we'd ask you to put the tape back in the tape drive if we needed something back quickly. But then if the building were to burn down, we would go out to that cloud copy that's off-site, recover that back, and you'd be up and running. Now, again, the nice thing about this typical environment is if all your stuff's out in the cloud, or if most of your work is in the cloud, there may be little or no backup taking place inside of your building because there might not be anything there to be backed up. But we always find that there, like I said, there's ones up in that instance where there's a few PCs sitting around, somebody's running a design package, and they've got a whole bunch of kitchen designs on there. Well, it makes sense to keep those in the building and just push them off at the end of the day. But if you're really running out there in the full cloud environment, your backups are taking place from disk to disk inside of the data center, so you don't even have to worry about it. The most important part of this going into the cloud, and I'll say this probably 100 times before it's all said and done and we get everybody moved off of old technology, is this stuff has gotten a little bit complicated because of all these different kinds of servers and this new network, the network environment that you're moving into. And it's really important that you have some IT resources around to take care of that. In the past, what you had in the old days of the Dimensions world was kind of a call us when something breaks and we'll fix it model. And that didn't really work all that well as we moved forward into new technology, because sometimes things needed to be watched as they ran during the day. Operating system updates became very important. If you ever pay any attention to what's going on out there in the security world, Microsoft releases updates to their software every Tuesday, and Java and Macromedia's Flash product and so forth do updates constantly, because these operating systems and these things they're laying on top of the operating systems have exploits available in them. They have openings, they have bugs in them that somebody could take advantage of to compromise somebody's network. And this stuff needs kind of a constant churn of updates and management to keep it all stable and safe and, you know, kept locked down so the bad guys can't cause any grief. And so it's really important to have a team of people watching that, as opposed to having just some people around that you can call when something bad goes wrong. The job of the IT department today becomes to that of the problem preventers. We have to stay involved and keep everything under control so that you don't have problems. And so what happens is we actually get involved and stay involved with all this infrastructure on an ongoing basis every day, all day long. We have tools in-house here that, like I mentioned last time, we'd spent a bunch of money building out these remote management tools that monitor all 100 different aspects of the network. We look at the servers to make sure that they're performing properly. We make sure the operating system updates get applied on time. We update a lot of people's third-party software products. You know, we basically keep everything healthy. We make sure that the user accounts get added and deleted as you hire and fire employees or change somebody's role. We make sure that the security infrastructure of your network is proper, so that when you're all sitting on the same server, management can have, you know, corporate level spreadsheets and so forth sitting on the hard drive of that server without worrying about somebody else poking around and getting access to that data that's controlled through the security layers of the operating system. There's a lot of stuff that we have to do to keep everything playing well and working well together. And so we basically have taken the tact on this, that we have to be involved with it on a day-to-day basis and watching all this stuff and doing all this work behind the scenes, so that as you're using the stuff in front of you, it just runs every day and you don't have to worry about it. We watch the internet connections. As I said, typically what will happen is we'll know, we get an audible alarm that plays up on our big board here. The two little pictures I've got on the screen are snapshots off of our Network Operations Center big boards on the wall. And when our systems find out that they're pinging and talking to your internet connection all the time, as soon as that connection drops for a second, we know about it. And our system alerts us by opening up a trouble ticket, playing an audible alarm that makes everybody look up and realize, hey, we got a problem out there with somebody, and here's exactly what's going on. And so not only are we watching to make sure everything runs well all the time, but we're immediately there to take care of any problem that does happen, whereas opposed to in the old days, you'd sit there and start to go, I think something's wrong, and well, let's see if we can figure it out, and maybe 10 or 15 minutes has gone down the road before you even place the call, and then maybe nobody's available to take that call right then, so now half hour, an hour's gone by, and you've been down the whole time, and nobody really even knows yet what the problem is. In today's world, we know immediately there is a problem, and 99% of the time we know exactly what the problem is, and by the time you get a hold of us, we're already working on solving the problem. We'll call the internet provider directly and say, hey, we've lost our connection into this building. Let's get it fixed. We monitor the backups much more aggressively than backups were in the old days. I wrote the backup software, the scripts that ran in the Unix world to back up your dimensions data, and I know all we could really do was kind of count how many files we were supposed to back up, count how many we thought we did back up. If the two numbers matched, we crossed our fingers and called it a good backup. That was the best the backup could be monitored in that age, and that was all there was. But today we can tell you exactly what happens with the backup. If a particular file gets missed, we know what file it was and why it got missed. We know exactly what's going on. It's not very vague these days. It's very precise about what's going on. We watch the viruses and the malware. There's just a ton of that stuff out there on the networks these days, and it's easy to get into your system, even if your people are on the job, and pay attention to what they're doing and try not to open up malicious emails or go to websites that are infected. You just never know where this stuff's coming from. So you have to have a layered approach to keeping it out. We put the best sonic walls, the best firewalls in the business out there to provide the first layer. We use good antivirus and anti-malware software to put that second layer around there, but we still find that we've got to be on top of it and watch for what's going on because, you know, stuff can still slip through. And if something does happen as we're working on these systems now through the tools that are built into these RMM tools, we can be on your desktop immediately helping you with a problem. That's something that just didn't happen in the old days. I know I've had hundreds of you try to explain to me what's on your screen or read me that message exactly. And maybe you missed the one word that was the most critical to me, and so I didn't understand what you were telling me. Today it's not like that. If you have a problem on your desktop, we just jump on your desktop just with you and look right over your shoulder. We can take your computer over if we need to. We can jump into the operating system and tweak it if we need to. We can restart a service or whatever. But it's as if we're sitting in the building with you all the time, watching your systems, keeping everything running. And if you need help, we just get right in there with you and take care of it. Because you will find from time to time there will be a pop-up message that Windows says, hey, this service is doing this, or hey, this update needs to take place. And a lot of times with the customers that we manage in this world today, they'll just call us up and say, hey, I've got this pop-up on my screen. Can you look at it and tell me what it means? And it's so much easier for my technicians to just look at it for themselves, see exactly what's going on. Then they know, oh, that's no big deal. Here's what we're going to do to clear that up. Or, uh-oh, we need to jump on that right away. We've seen people where they've got a virus in there, and we see the pop-up that says, hey, your files are going to be infected if you do this. The people who've gotten us involved right then, a lot of times we were able to kind of circumvent that virus, get in there and fix it before it became a major problem. So this virtualizing the IT department we've done about the same thing that we did with the servers. We've moved the people out of your business into one center where they can be the most effective, they can use their time the most wisely, and they can affect the largest amount of customers, just like we've moved the computers into the data center to put them in the environment that's best for them. We make sure our technicians stay happy here just like we keep the computers happy in the data center. So it's a whole different kind of environment here with trying to keep a bunch of technicians happy. But basically, by doing that, we get you out of the mode of having to have a local IT guy that you keep on a retainer or you pay to come run into your business once a week to do stuff. The only time we need a local guy to do anything is if we physically have to pick up a piece of equipment and move it from this place on the counter over to that place on the counter. So once in a while, we will find that we still do work with local guys. Maybe you've got a guy that you've been working with, or maybe one of your people is pretty savvy with computers. And from time to time, we'll treat that person as our eyes and our hands to pick something up and physically move it and maybe plug a cable into the back of it. From there on, we're right back on top of it. We can get a hold of it, do our thing. We don't need anybody out there. So what we've found, a lot of people were paying a local guy a retainer, or they're paying him so much a month to come in and do some things around the network. You can offload that onto the virtual guys here and eliminate that cost as well. As part of taking the entire network under our wing, there's some other stuff that we can manage as it starts to make its way onto the landscape. I've already mentioned just a little bit the smartphones. Another acronym that you're probably starting to hear, or if you haven't heard it much, you will soon. It's this BYOD. It stands for Bring Your Own Device. And the concept there is just that a lot of your employees already have purchased their own smartphones. They've got their iPhone or their Android or so forth, and they've already bought it. They've made that investment in the physical hardware, but they just want to get their email on it, or maybe they want to get to that remote desktop on it. Well, as they bring that device into your business, obviously you don't want to keep them from getting access to their email whenever they want to get access to it. If they want to answer an email at 6 o'clock at night or 7 o'clock at night, I can't see that hurting your business. But the things that we have to be careful of as we start to go into this BYOD realm where people are bringing their own equipment is, what happens if that equipment gets lost or stolen, or if you let that employee go? If someone has brought a phone into your business and done just a simple thing of hooking up their email account to the phone so they can read their email at their desk or on the phone, now that phone is, to some degree, it's part of your business network. And so we need to really address what's going to happen if that person leaves the business. How do we ensure that that phone account or that email account gets disconnected from the phone? What about the contacts that are on the phone? Are they your contacts or are they their contacts? If they've moved company data over onto that device, maybe somebody's working on a spreadsheet on their tablet or laptop that they brought in from home, and you let that person go, there's got to be some mechanism in place for you to know that that data either stays with your business or you already know that it wasn't stuff that you were worried about, and so you know it's gone. The smartphones in particular are just rampant out there, and a lot of times when I ask people about them, I ask them if they have a policy about whether or not they're going to allow people to bring them in. Nobody's really addressing that these days, but people start to get nervous when I say, okay, well, let's assume that you're the business owner and you've got your email and your financial spreadsheet where you're doing your budget analysis for next year on your device, and you just set the thing down at Starbucks and head out to the car and leave it laying on the desk in there, leave it laying on the counter. Then what happens? Well, you know, everybody kind of gets that blank look and they start to realize that, oh, you're right, that could create a problem. Now somebody's got my email account, and for all intents and purposes, they are me while I'm even driving back to the office in a panic because I lost my phone. And you don't know what's going to happen during that period of time. But by putting a management layer onto those devices, we can control that device remotely. As soon as you tell us it's lost or stolen, we can do whatever action is appropriate for that type of device. We can lock the device. We can wipe the data on it remotely so that even if somebody stole the laptop, at least they don't get access to your information. If you do terminate an employee, we can make sure that as they walk out the door, we disconnect all their email accounts and everything from all their devices. It's not a huge thing. It's not something that we really want to, you know, be telling people they can't do, because it is starting to happen all over the place. People love their iPads and their Google tablets and the Microsoft Surface devices and their iPhones and their Androids, and we probably all should be embracing that mobile workforce. If they do want to work later in the day or they want to take that out to a job site, let's don't hold them back, but let's don't also go into this without our eyes wide open and realize that there is going to be some management issues that come along with that change. It's happening whether you want to believe it or not. I bet if you take a poll of your employees today, half, 75, 85, 90% of them have smartphones. And if you asked them if they'd like to read their email on there, probably 50% of them would say, heck yeah, I'd love that. And again, now we're starting to get into that mode where we better be thinking about what we're going to do if something goes wrong in that environment. Other companies out there are actually saying, you know what, we do want to have people embrace these mobile devices, so we'll buy them and we'll pay for the contract on them. But again, now you might want to put some further stipulations on there going, okay, we're going to buy you a smartphone, but we don't want you playing Angry Birds all day long on the thing. So maybe we press a policy out to that phone that says, okay, no Angry Birds gets installed on this phone. And now there's a management layer that actually keeps the software from getting stuck on there in the first place. It's your device, you're paying for it, you get to have some say over what goes on there. So the BYOD thing is a big change that's happening, and it's happening outside of your business, and really there's no way any of us are going to stop it, and I really don't think we should be. I just think we should be keeping our eyes wide open about it, and we should be going into it with, you know, with some forethought about what we're going to do if something goes wrong. Some other things that are kind of outside of the business a little bit that typically have been a gray area about who takes care of them are things like your domain name records. In order for us to get mail here at appliedintegration.net, we had to go out and register the domain name of appliedintegration.net. You've all got your own domain names, or most of you do. And so, but there is a little bit of administration that goes along with those domain name records. And typically, that's been something that you're kind of at the mercy of whoever built your website or whoever hosted your email in the first place, or, you know, your brother-in-law's kid who came in and hooked that stuff up for you. It's never been something that's really anybody's folded into the big package and said, we'll take care of that for you. But as you move off into moving your email over to the Exchange services or getting access to your business from outside, there are some things that need to go with it that affect or are affected by your domain name records. And that's one of the things that we can just fold into our umbrella of service for you and just go, you know what, don't worry about that stuff. We'll just, you know, move your name into under our umbrella of being the administrative managers for it, and you can forget about worrying about it. We'll make sure that your domain name doesn't expire. We'll let you know when it needs to be renewed, We'll make sure that all the right things point to the right places so your website's always there and your email always gets through, and you just don't have to worry about it. But it is out there, and it has typically been something that businesses have kind of been just left. Nobody's really kind of taken it under their wing and said, here, let us help you make this part of the whole big picture, because it's an important part of the whole big picture. And in part and parcel with that is the websites themselves. Some of you have very good websites. You're very active with them. You feel like they're helping drive business into your business. Others of you just kind of have done nothing, or you basically have an electronic brochure up there which says what your hours are and where to find you, but maybe isn't really doing anything to drive traffic into your business. If you feel like you're at that point where you'd like to have somebody review the whole big picture, and maybe you've started to hear a lot about what's going on with social media out there, with a Facebook page for your business and maybe a Twitter account and a LinkedIn page and all those kinds of things, all of that kind of needs to be taken collectively together with an eye towards a common strategy of what are you trying to do with this stuff. And again, that's something that has typically been left to a completely separate third party that doesn't have any idea about what else is going on in your business, and so they don't do a very good job of tying it in. And what our approach with this stuff is basically we just want to throw our arms wide open and say, look, we know all this technology stuff is a little bit overwhelming. It's all difficult to understand. It's changing by the day, and boy, I just wish somebody would take over all of it and just let me sleep at night. And that's what we're trying to do. Is we've got the team of guys here who live, eat, and breathe this stuff all day, every day. And so we just want to say, let's just offload it all from you. We'll help you make it all run smooth, all work together, and get what you want to get out of this stuff, as opposed to just kind of feeling like you're just left to, to kind of fend for yourselves. So I've talked a little longer than I wanted to, so I'm going to stop talking now and turn this over to Charlie, and we'll start to throw out, we've got 10 or 15 minutes left. Let's see if we can answer some questions for you guys, or, if you're ready, like I said before, we're ready to, start answering questions one-on-one offline outside of the webinar. And I know Charlie's going to kind of give you the details of when we've got the Spruce webinar scheduled out there. So Charlie, I'll turn this over to you now and just feed me the questions, and we'll go from there.
Thanks, Don. All right, well, I hope that was informative for everyone. 48 minutes is a long time to sit there and listen to Don drone on. I can contest to that. But, it's a lot of information, and hopefully it was pretty insightful. And again, like Don said, we're more than happy to take questions offline or through email, or you're welcome to call or whatever. But right now we've got, a good 11 minutes left to kind of answer questions online here. So if you guys want to just fire into your little question thing on your console there, I'll just go down the list and start answering some of the questions for everybody. We did have a question earlier on about how Microsoft Exchange works with Google tools like the Google Mail, Gmail, and Google Calendar. So, with stuff like that, that is kind of a one-on-one conversation we'll have with everybody. If you are using Google Calendar, you're using Gmail, you're using a lot of those Google tools, obviously Microsoft and Google are competitors, but I can tell you what Microsoft offers as far as a unified communications tool for business, and then I can also contest, because I'm very familiar with the Google tools that are out there, I can tell you the advantages and benefits of both, and how we could do that kind, how we can make it work for your business or transition over from one to the other, or just kind of give you some advice on that. So if people have those kind of questions, specific to how do I do this or how do I do that, we're always here and happy to answer those kind of things via email, or just give me a call and I'll kind of go through that with you. And then says we're die-hard Android people. So same thing. This is a Google, if you're a Google Android person, or even if you're an Apple person and you're wondering about, how the Microsoft world meshes, the one thing I can say is when it comes to the business tools like Word, Excel, PowerPoint, Access, those tools, nobody does those better than Microsoft in the business world. And that's just because I think of the fruition over the years. Microsoft Excel is just what's embedded itself into modern corporate culture, you know, I can't tell you how many times I try to help customers try to open a Microsoft Excel spreadsheet in OpenOffice because they like to use OpenOffice because it's free. And at the end of the day, we all know, because we're in business, that free isn't always better. And usually you get what you pay for. So, you know, again, I'll be happy to talk to people about the differences between what you get if you pay for a Microsoft solution and what you get if you use free tools from Google or from, you know, other sources. Let's see. Someone showed up a little bit late, and he's asking, did you guys touch on suggested or required internet speed? Don, you want to answer that?
Well, we didn't touch really specifically on the speed. I did say we do need to have broadband out there. In the past, a T1 was a big internet connection. It was 1.5 megabits up and down. That's really not a big connection these days. But the size of pipe that you need is directly related to the number of users you have. So the best rule of thumb is the fastest connection you can get. And today there's some astronomical connections out there within reason. I mean, we know there's, you know, Comcast has their Metro Ethernet around here, which is extremely fast, but you pay for it. So we can help you find that balance out there. We can look at what you've got today and let you know, are you good, or do we maybe need to look at your options? So that's probably the first thing we want to start with is let's figure out how many people you have. Let's see what you've got today. And not only will we be looking at the speed, but we'll look at what kind of technology you're on to see how typically stable that is. You know, DSL is a pretty good connection, but as far as the service goes, it can be one of the lower terms of service when it comes to the phone company getting it fixed when something goes wrong. So that's important as well. So there's no one number that I can throw out that says, well, you've got to have an X speed, but let's, you know, we can certainly look at what you've got and what you can get in your area and figure out if we can make it work.
Great, thanks, Don. And then what's the best way to determine if our broadband connection is solid enough to be able to use the cloud?
Well, again, that comes back to you probably have a pretty good feel on when it's been down, when you've had the internet go out of business, or, you know, you can't get to a website. And but if we're monitoring your devices, or if we are looking at anything that we've got in there, we probably have a pretty good feel for what you've got right now. And if not, we can tell usually by what kind of service it is, what kind of service level agreement we can expect to get from the phone company. Now, let me just tell you this, no matter what kind of business connection you have into your business, there may be a time when it is down for some reason. I mean, I've got redundant connections out there all over the place where we have 2 internet connections into a building because one can go down and we fail over to the second one. And I did mention that we could do that in that first seminar in your business by putting your internet connection into the firewall and then having a failover connection perhaps through the cellular network or something like that. But the most important part of this really is simply to find out what kind of service level agreement that connection is under right now with the phone company, because that's really what's critical. Is if somebody digs through a trench, or, you know, digs a trench through a wire out there, a cable or a piece of fiber optics, it's going to be down no matter what. But if you're in a service agreement that the phone company is really motivated to get you back up and running, that's the most important thing, is how quickly are they going to respond when there is a problem. You know, because if it's the lowest class of service out there and somebody gets a cable cut, everybody else is going to get fixed before you do. So that's kind of, in my mind, as important or more important than the actual speed is what's the service level agreement that the phone company's got. And in order to determine that, we're just going to have to look at what you have today or what you can get. And again, we might find that we're going to recommend that we, you know, talk to some of the other vendors if you're really going to do this and see about getting you a better, more solid connection, or we may walk in right out of the gate and say, you know what you've got is pretty good, but we suggest that we put a redundant connection in as well through one of these other methods of getting you a backup plan if that thing does go down.
All right, thanks, Don. Any other questions? I think I've gone through them all here that are currently out there. Anybody else have any other questions? In the meantime, I will let you know we will be sending out another webinar invitation for a spruce demonstration. It's going to be probably an hour and a half to 2 hours for this to kind of get through the spruce, and it's going to be on March 5th at 1 o'clock. Everybody will get the same kind of webinar invitation like you got for these last 2 webinars. And I'll send that out, and you'll see, basically what we're going to do is we're going to just invite everybody in. And it's the same format as we have here, only it'll be a Spruce guy on the phone doing a demonstration on the Spruce system. And this is a really good opportunity. If you haven't seen Spruce, it's a great way to get a really good overall view of the system. We've kind of populated them with some questions about where Dimensions lacks a little bit, what the benefits are of going from Dimensions to Spruce. So we're really going to highlight the places where, things you struggle with in Dimensions, like maybe special order processing, of course, document imaging and management, those kind of things. They're really going to touch on those things that Dimensions people have always kind of struggled with, or products that you just don't have today. So, and the cool thing about us hosting the webinar is, it's somewhat anonymous, because you don't have to deal one-on-one with a salesman. No sales guy's going to come barging in your door and call you every day, and you're not going to be obligated to be at this demo, which is really kind of a cool thing if I was in your shoes, to just get a really good high-level overview of the thing without having to obligate yourself to give up your third born and your name and your address and your phone number and have a salesman calling you all the time. So, because I know how software sales guys are. I used to be one. So, anybody else have any other questions? Because I think that's it. It looks like, Don, you must either put everybody to sleep or you've answered everybody's questions.
Good. Well, I hope it's the latter and not the former.
Yeah, right. So someone's asking, the Spruce seminars on March 5th at 1 p.m. Mountain Time, same time as here, or same time as today, and the last webinar we did. And somebody said they're awake and they are enjoying the presentation. So with that, I guess we'll go ahead.
That Spruce one to be, we're kind of shooting for 2 full hours. We've kind of run that same risk with those guys that you'll all be asleep, but I think anywhere between an hour and a half to 2 hours, they feel like is plenty of time to really kind of just give you that high level. I know a lot of times the questions we get are, well, how do I do a general ledger journal entry and da-da-da. It's not going to be that kind of thing. It's going to be the big picture. And again, what we're trying to kind of make sure you understand is who they are, some about Spruce as a business, because again, you're kind of winding up in partnership with these guys. You want to know who they are and why we're recommending them so strongly. And then I do think it's important for you to just get that big view. And then as if we wind up, it goes well, you can maybe drill in, or maybe you're ready then at that point to go, okay, now I want some real specific stuff. But I think this will be a good high-level thing, but we are kind of asking you to try to commit 2 hours to it. And we've asked the guys to try to shoot for really an hour and a half, but I think it'll be anywhere from an hour and a half to 2 hours there.
Great. And then we will, I'm going to hit stop record here in a minute. We'll post the recording out on the YouTube site. Anybody that wants to be able to access that, we can send you the link. But any other questions, feel free to email me. You guys all have my email because you got the webinar invitation, or of course Dawn, or just give us a call here. Sue will answer the phone. We'll be happy to talk to you guys. And again, I've told the Spruce guys to not go barreling after people, so we'll engage with people as you see fit, what works with your schedules, talk to you more about these upgrades and technology opportunities as you guys are kind of planning over the next couple of years. Again, if you were at the last webinar, we're really trying to kind of think about getting people on the schedule because we've only got 22 months now to kind of get people converted if they are going to make a change off a dimension. So something to keep in the back of your mind is that if you're considering a change, take a look at the calendar and think about when you might want to do it, and then we can plan accordingly. So again, thanks so much everybody for joining, and keep an eye out for the next webinar invite if you would like to join on the Spruce demo, and we hope to talk to you soon. Thank you.